one of the big challenges that we have as leaders and as people who are engaged with others in the wider society is that of mental health, and that of people who find themselves on a slippery slope, whereby it can start off with a simple thing like they become people who will be a bit anxious, then they become depressive, then they develop all sorts of bipolar disorders, and sometimes they can develop and then they can go into things like become psychotic. Yeah. So a lot of these things like anxiety, stress, depression, and some of the others, even up to suicide, they are all part of a continuum. Not everybody who develops something will go on. Okay, most people they have mechanisms within themselves or in the wider society that they can deal with it. So for instance, sometimes you say, I'm feeling depressed. It's not that because you suffer with depression, it's just that there's a moment in time when things are not right, and then you may use that expression, but it's not that you have been diagnosed with a disease called depression or a condition called depression. And this is a difficult subject, especially in Muslim circles, because many of our people who are learned, they do not understand what these medical conditions are. And often they equate, if somebody develops something which they consider to be a mental disorder, or they behave in an erratic way, that it must be that their iman is low. So if your iman is low, it means that, there are many scholars who will tell you, if you're a true Muslim and a true believer and you really believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then you can never become depressed. You can never become, I don't know if you've ever heard that before. It's there all over, if you look at television, you look at YouTube videos, some of the best scholars will tell you things like these. So that, and this is the big problem, such that I know, for instance, in Trinidad, that apart from sort of the general practitioners who get a lot of patients, but sometimes some of the biggest lines of people queuing up to go for cure for their problems are people who go to these exorcists, isn't it? These people who deal with jinn. So jinn removal is a big thing, is a big thing. Some people have their own jinn, people to be able to handle their affairs, the jinn affairs. And this is a huge problem. And what makes it even worse is that very often what happens is that people, instead of seeking professional help when there is a problem, is that the first port of call that they will make when a mental health issue comes up is when they go to a jinn therapist or somebody, or the imam. I know somebody. Therefore, the imam will be able to help. Help this poor soul and make them better. And this only exacerbates and makes the problem even worse. So somebody might start off in a simple problem, let's say a simple depressive episode they might have, and it might trigger certain things in their life. And then they go by somebody who gives them an advice which may not necessarily be the right advice, or tell them to go and read dhikr, or go and read the Quran, or read the surah, or drink this potion with these ayat of the Quran, and that type of thing. It still happens. It still happens here in this country. But these are all things, and then only when the problem gets out of hand, especially in the home, then they will be desperate enough to say, well, look, why don't we seek some professional help? By the time professional help is sought, the problem has escalated to a new level, where solving the problem now becomes a much bigger issue. Whereas something that could have been, as I say, fixed very quickly, now has become something which goes on. The other thing to bear in mind is that with many of these mental state disorders, what you will find is that there are no quick fix solutions. You see, if it is that you have a let's say you got an infection. I can simply give you maybe some antibiotics. If it's a bacterial infection, take this antibiotics. It's a 7-day course, and after which, you probably will find some form of relief, and it will rid yourself of this infection. And then you say, well, yeah, I'm cured now. But unfortunately, this is not the case with mental disorders. Many times when you diagnose with something, you diagnose with something for life. It is not that and it's about learning how to control that. And more so, it could be that you can operate more or less as a normal person in the wider society. But another problem which makes it worse, and this I want to bring it up at this stage, because one of the programs that we run in the UK is a program called La Tahzan, and normally it's a one-day workshop that we do, where we go through all different aspects of mental health. And I'm just showing you, and I'm going to share with you just some of the stuff that we do. But one of the lectures that we conduct at the very beginning of this course is something to do with what is known as shame. And many times people hide what is happening to them because of that of shame, of how others will perceive. Because if you were to tell others, that I suffer with a bipolar disorder, or the reason why I'm like this, I was erratic in this thing is because I'm not well, and therefore, but people try to hide a lot of these things, a lot of these problems that they may suffer from. So that of shame, and shame is a big stigma which we find in the UK. I don't know about Trinidad, but certainly in the UK. Whereas in some countries, like in America, it's not people tell oh, my shrink is so and so, I have him, and everybody seems to have a shrink. But what we're talking about here is a growing problem. The situation is so bad that now we're looking at 1 in 4 people will develop a mental disorder over the course of their lifespan. Okay? And that figure of 1 in 4 is increasing. And perhaps going up to 1 in 2 in places like America. It is becoming a huge problem. Now, we are human beings just like any other people who live in society. Yes, of course, we are Muslims, but that in no way is going to make us immune from developing the fact that we are also we will also suffer with these mental disorders. So what I want to equip you with today, inshallah, are some Quranic principles which will not prevent you from developing mental disorders, but more so will be able to equip you and be able to handle some of the challenges that you might face, and some of the things which people regularly see, and how to be able to bring into context some of the ayat of the Quran. For instance, the Quran says about La taqnatu min rahmatillah, do not despair of the mercy of Allah. And as you would know, that most of you would have heard about a condition known as schizophrenia. Okay, and sometimes it can become something which is suicidal or even depression. Okay, so the tipping point is that, so if you ask yourself the question, if somebody is depressed and they reach the stage in their life when they feel that they no longer feel that they should exist or they should be alive, and they only wish to die. Okay, and that can happen to anybody. So the question is, what is the tipping point? So if it is that you are the person's physician or doctor or therapist or what have you, so what are the trigger things that you would look for to know whether or not that person is, that it's really bad, this is something serious. Okay? One of the things that we use, and we suddenly we call them red flags. Like for instance, if you have back pain and millions of people have back pain, and you go and then the doctor doesn't even look at you. He sends you out of his office knowing that you're a bit of a something that that it'll be all right. Just take these painkillers and off you go. Just give him my 300-400 or whatever it is. Okay. So we have something known as red flags even for back pain. So if you went to the doctor and said, I just have, my pain is aching, I might have radiating pain in my legs, I can't move, and this and that, and so on and so on, then they would be just looking at you, yeah. But if you suddenly said, look, for instance, I can't feel, I'm becoming incontinent. Yeah? Incontinent of urine or incontinent of feces. Then those are red flags. Something has happened there. And those are the things that you look out for. And they say, well, look, this is an emergency. It's not just a simple matter of having back pain. So in the same way, you have that with mental disorders or mental diseases, or even somebody who might be on the brink of becoming suicidal. So one of the things which we look for is that we look for when a person reaches the point of despair in their lives. Okay? So if a person says to you that, look, I don't feel as I'm in a state of despair. I don't feel as though that life is worth living anymore. Those are the type of things that you will look for, because you know that they are on a slippery slope. It may well escalate into something far, far more. And that is based from an ayah of the Quran. La taqnatu min rahmatillah. So what does the Quran do? What the Quran does, the Quran doesn't say that, it says la taqnatu, which means that do not despair. It does not mean that you will not despair. What is telling you that you will despair?